this is a bad segue. Sally Hemings.
See?
Should we just get...
Yeah, let's talk about Sally. Let's talk about slaves again.
Okay.
Because everyone wants to talk about slaves. Yeah, Sally Hemings is... so Thomas Jefferson had a wife. She died, which, people do sometimes. And he never formally remarried. But in Monticello, there were some light-skinned babies who looked a little bit like the Jeffersons that started cropping up. And the rumor, some people would say it's more than a rumor. I would agree that it's more than a rumor, but less than a fact that Thomas Jefferson had several children with Sally Hemings, who was his wife's, now dead, wife's half-sister and maid, parentheses, slave. And so that obviously sets up some, not just like ideological, like, because Thomas Jefferson also was very transparent about how he did not think that black people and white people were intellectually the same, that they were inferior, and if black people were to be not slaves, that they should like go back to Africa, like they should not intermingle. He was very open about that. And allegedly, there were some light-skinned babies that looked like some of the Jeffersons that ended up coming out in Monticello. And of the 600 slaves that Jefferson owned, he only freed 10. And those 10 happened to be Sally Hemings' children. So I would say, not rightly or wrongly, just as a fact of what is, the general consensus is that Thomas Jefferson definitely had kids with Sally Hemings, and those are his kids, and so he freed them because they were his kids. When he died, not while he was alive, but when he died, they were now free. And there was some, in like the 90s or early 2000s, there was some like DNA testing done to see like, okay, was this really, like, was it true? And on the one hand, they found that, how do they describe it? Like a male with DNA that matched the Jefferson male, a Jefferson male.
Mm-hmm. The male, like the line.
The male lineage of Jefferson was found in one of the known children of Sally Hemings. And so, and also in their time together, like he traveled around with Sally Hemings. Sally Hemings was pregnant shortly after Thomas Jefferson had gone back to Monticello, and like they were closer than, he was closer with her than with other people, and definitely other slaves. The controversy, the reasonable doubt, is that Thomas Jefferson has siblings, male siblings. So conceivably, realistically, it could have been one of his male siblings, specifically his brother, who could also, like genetically, that's where the match could come from. It does not have to be from Thomas Jefferson. So, all that to say, I personally think that it is possible, definitely, and I would even go so far as to say probable, that Thomas Jefferson had at least some children with Sally Hemings. But you disagree.
Spoiler alert. Well, I would say, so when I started prepping for this episode, I had already had it in my head, like, oh yeah, this was obviously, Jefferson did this is just the way it is, and we just have to look at it how it is and accept it as fact and everything. And there was, so just because I like Jefferson doesn't mean that I'm like, oh no, he did something bad. Well, clearly that can't be true because he's such a blah blah blah.
It's a paragon of virtue. He's not.
Right. So I'm really was surprised at what I found that cast more doubt than what I was expecting. And so, like I said, I'm totally okay with accepting whatever the truth is.
As long as it fits what I believe.
Yeah, exactly. My own personal bias.
Yes.
So, when looking at this, so you had the DNA business, so Ancestry.com, there's stuff in the late 90s with the internet, this stuff really started to kind of come up. And so got Sally Hemings' grave and everything, and tested her DNA, tested Thomas Jefferson, their kids, specifically one, Eston, I think his name was. So there's like one like confirmed kid that was like, okay, this one clearly belonged to Jefferson and Sally Hemings because the DNA matches the Jefferson male line. And since he was the owner, like we said, like, you know, where there's smoke, there's fire. Okay. The reason why I'm more skeptical about it, I would say, like, I'm not like, oh no, clearly that didn't happen. I'm just more like in the doubt category, is because, one, it's kind of a jump to conclusion that it would just be him. Sure. Just because it's in the male line. Now, sure, yeah, but he was still the owner of her, so it's like maybe he got kind of weird and, you know, didn't think anything would come out. But if you look at like a lot of his writings and like what he found as attractive, like he, as odd as it's going to sound, he didn't find black people attractive at all. He actually found them like kind of ugly.
Yeah, no, like he was very open about it. He did not particularly like black people.
He didn't like especially like the beauty side, like
their big old lips and their
the fact that they
wide noses breathing up the white man's air.
So it's a weird way to like defend him because of that. It's like it's a lose.
He couldn't have done it because he thought they were ugly. No, but like people are allowed to have preferences,
and also
they're allowed to have preferences.
Yeah, and also just the fact that he found what he found really attractive in women was wealth and with knowledge and like being really smart and wise and obviously like high education, anything
so right?
So opposite of that.
Yeah.
So there's that. That's not the only thing why I'm casting doubt. Another thing is at the same time when this story broke out was right with in the late 90s. There was an interesting scandal happening in the late 90s with Bill Clinton,
Billiam Clinton.
Yeah. What the frick is her name?
Monica Lewinsky. How dare you forget?
So she, obviously, a big affair happening with this intern. It's like, you know, interesting uses of a cigar. You can look into the facts yourself. Anyway,
we'll get into that.
So this was used as a political move to say, hey,
Thomas Jefferson didn't. Everyone loves Thomas Jefferson, so everyone
shouldn't blame Clinton for this because look what Jefferson did to try to lessen the impact that Clinton was facing on that.
Which is a cheap shot.
I automatically get really skeptical when that happens.
Convenient. It's very convenient. Timing is convenient.
There was Randolph, his brother. I mean, Thomas was like in his 60s when this would have happened. And, Sally Hemings, I think, would have been as young as like, still like a teenager and everything. He had a younger brother, and his brother had a lot of sons that were a lot closer to age than her. And they were all really close together. And it was, you know, there's other like small things to kind of just like poke the doubt a little bit. But the idea that it was just a closed case because of his male line and it happened to be with the big Monica Lewinsky scandal and everything. It's just kind of like, like we're never really going to know probably, but I have enough doubt to like veer on the side of probably not. Maybe, I mean, like I said, I'm willing to be convinced, but with how he viewed black people and how he viewed beauty and what he was attracted to and how he had, I mean, he was a bachelor, but he wasn't married. He had a lot of women like throwing themselves at him.
He was a French diplomat.
Yeah.
He had the pick of the litter basically.
Right.
For, you know, yeah. So as a percentage, I would say I'm probably like 65 to 70% probably.
Okay.
Like the proximity is there, the means motive is kind of lacking. I mean, basically we're just down to like loneliness and proximity. But then like why her specifically? Yeah. And then opportunity is, you know, there's some like trips that he came back to Monticello and then like 8 to 10 months later there was a baby and then like so some lining up, but that's not definitive because there's the DNA it's not Thomas Jefferson.
Right.
They say Jefferson and we think Thomas Jefferson. Now, there are a lot of Jeffersons running around Monticello. It was a big place and there was a lot of Jeffersons, a lot of male Jeffersons. And I think, you know, you can make the case for many people other than Thomas. So you cannot pin this on him. Like in a criminal court, you can't pin it on him. There's not enough evidence. In the court of maybe, I mean, I don't know. I am also willing to be convinced like this is less likely than people seem to think it is, than the culture seems to think it is. I would prefer it, and honestly, like,
Sure. I mean, yeah,
I prefer it. And you are right. It's like he was pretty openly like, I don't really like black people, and so for him to do like, I really don't like black people. I think they should go away. But also, I'm gonna have 10 kids with this one with a black, like, when I have other prospects, it's like
it just didn't make sense with his character.
It doesn't seem
he never showed himself like to be that kind of person.
If anyone would have done it, it would have been John Adams. I don't know. That was too far. John Adams would have done that. He loved Abigail, and she didn't die.
She didn't die. She's still alive.
She's yet alive. I just talked to her last week. I asked her. No, she didn't die while he was.
Yeah, no, I understand. No, so I think it's just kind of one of those things where it's like, to me, if I was like scale 1 to like 1 to 10, like 10 absolutely, 1 absolutely not, and 5 be like, either way, I would probably land honestly like a 2 or a 3.
Okay, like, so probably not.
Yeah, I'm like pretty. I feel confident enough to have the position, but I'm also like open. I still want to be open enough to be convinced, because I don't want to just like shut my brain off and be like, no, he can't, because it's just like never a good way to go about politics and history and everything.
That's true.
But it just, the one side just outweighs the other so much more, in my opinion.
There's a lot of doubt. I think you've convinced me. I was at like a 6.5 to 7. I think I will land at a 5.
Okay.
Where it is reasonable and possible, but there are a lot of confounding factors that would make it, I would say, equally possible that it could have been someone else. And honestly, like, from my consideration of his greatness as a president, like that's a pretty big moral failing. That's a very big moral failing, and that's different from like a political, like ideological failing. That's like a crime. Although they didn't really consider it a crime, but also it's like there's a lot of stuff to it. So
he would have known. I mean, at that point, people weren't implying to, oh yeah, people sleep with their slaves. What's the problem?
Yeah, that's totally fine.
That wasn't. Like, I mean,
it'd be like
consensus.
It'd be like having sex with a cow, basically. It's like it's if not like clearly it's a human and all that stuff, like that level of badness, but also just sort of like gross.
Yeah.
Like no, not good. The more I think about it, like. He could have had some, like, any, like, young French chick.
All right, that's what I'm saying.
Why a slave that you don't really like? It doesn't make sense. Anyways, we'll investigate further on the Patreon.
Yeah, you can do a part 2 on that. So.
Part 2. I almost said anyway. Anyways, so the Louisiana Purchase. That term 1 was big for him. That was like his crowning achievement. Lewis and Clark discovered grizzly bears, and I said Pocahontas because the kids were watching Pocahontas.
Oh, Sacagawea.
Yes, Chicago. Is it Sacagawea or Sacagawea?
Oh, I always thought it was Sacagawea.
I've always learned Sacagawea until I was in like 5th grade, and I went to a play.
Oh, okay.
And they said Sacagawea, which honestly and truly, I don't know. It sounds like it would be Sacagawea.
Yeah, it might be Sacagawea.
Sacagawea sounds like an Anglicanization.
It sounds like an English person reading Sacagawea.
What is that, Sacagawea?
Yeah.
All right, put her on the dollar.
So first term, obviously, the
Banger.
scaling back. Yeah.
Banger.
Second term, though, I think kind of an underrated thing, and it's kind of interesting bringing this up because of kind of what's been going on in terms of when we're recording this, but the Insurrection Act of 1807.
Yeah.
Being able to use the National Guard in an emergency where there's a big uprising.
Yeah.
It's, that's actually something I learned I didn't even know existed until like doing the study for this. And so the timing on that's kind of funny because I see people like, I don't know how deep we want to go into it, but
I mean, we talked about Monica Lewinsky and slaves, so we might as well.
The term of, it's unconstitutional to send your military to try to tame a big riot and uprising going on in cities. And it's like, well, it's actually not. Like, it is okay for them to, so it's a good thing we have that right, I guess,
Yeah.
Again, that's like another like federal favored thing for him to do.
Yeah.
So it's interesting how much he changed throughout his presidency.
I mean, it's one of those things where you definitely, it's another classic Tommy J flip-flop.
Yeah.
But you see the pragmatism in it. Like, whereas Adams, you can kind of see like the common thread of like, we need to keep the country together. We need to stop people from disrupting this still fragile, still very, very young country. And, you know, if the state is unwilling or unable to do it, that doesn't mean like, oh, I guess we just lose Georgia. There she goes. Like, no, we're like, we have to stay together.
Yeah.
And we do have a federal government, and we do have a federal army. If you're not going to or are unable to, because I mean, even think of it, it's like, it's one thing, because like nowadays we see like lack of political will to do it. Like, we'll just name California has a National Guard. They could do this. Like the LAPD is big enough. They could do this if they wanted to. For whatever reason, political, logistical, whatever, they're not. And there's like active riots and disruption to a major economic center of the country. Like, we can't just have that happen and have it be like a thing. Protest is different from riot. Riot's not protected. A protest is. So if a state is unable or unwilling to preserve its own safety and the safety of the citizens in there, that's where the federal level of government is designed to protect the rights of everyone, where the state is not empowered to or is unable or unwilling to. So like that's kind of the right move to plug into. Like, we're taking over now. It seems really bad because like we're used to, especially now in modern times, we're used to having police. And like you just escalate from city police to now county police to now state police. So there's levels of police where we don't have the military involved at all. So now you're involving the military. Like, this is a big, big deal to us. But in that time, it's like they didn't have police. They had like watchmen. Like,
right. Yeah.
Like some sheriffs, like there was some law enforcement, but it wasn't like an established city police. And then you had the militia, like the guys who had guns and uniforms were the militia. And they came in and did it. So,
well, the police force wasn't even really legitimized till like Theodore Roosevelt.
No, yeah, no.
It was kind of a joke even until he showed up.
Yeah, it was Billy Bob.
Yeah,
it was Billy Bob, and if you didn't like Billy Bob, you just shot Billy Bob, and then he was done. Like, that's what happened. So, yeah, the context is different for federal troops doing something. It was a big deal back then, but it was less of a big deal then than it is now. So, I'm just looking up when Marbury versus Madison was. Because that is a big...
Oh, I don't know if I have that.
You don't have that? It better be in his term. We'll cut this.
We talked about the embargo.
No, 1803, first term Jefferson.
Okay.
First term. How could we forget Marbury versus Madison? I remembered, but I didn't put it in my notes. So, okay, this is an AP U.S. history question. So Marbury versus Madison is a big Supreme Court case. And, okay, so we talk a lot about the executive because we're talking about presidents. But there's a whole third branch of government called the judicial branch. And the judicial branch is designed to arbitrate disagreements between states. But just like the president, we've only had a Supreme Court for like 10 years. So what are you even supposed to do? We very strongly now understand that the Supreme Court interprets laws and deems them constitutional or unconstitutional. Like, that is one of their primary functions now. That's not in the Constitution. That was not an enumerated power. So Marbury versus Madison, the Supreme Court gave itself the power of judicial review. They gave themselves the power to determine if a law was constitutional or not. That's a huge, big government thing that happened. But since it wasn't like an executive or legislative decision, it kind of happened as a court case, and it established precedent, meaning like, this is how we're going to do things from now on. Like, it's kind of absent from Thomas Jefferson. Like, he obviously didn't like it, but he has no control over it. And so, but it's a massive like power grab for the federal government. Because now they can nullify laws, kind of not by fiat, not just saying, no, I don't like that law, it's not constitutional. But before, they just didn't have the power. Like, a law could technically be unconstitutional and no one could really do anything about it. Like, you just have a war about it. But now the Supreme Court can say, no, that law is not enforceable. So useful. We've made good use of it, and it's now super baked into like how we do governance. But it wasn't at the time, and so it was like one of those things. Again, not Thomas Jefferson specific, but it was 1803.
Yeah, that's right. First
term Jefferson. Got to add it in there. He's got to get some points for presiding over. He doesn't get points for it.
Well, I mean, even just overseeing all that, I mean, that's still so many things could just like go haywire so quickly.
Yeah, you wake up one day and it's like, hey, the Supreme Court decided that it can nullify laws.
Yeah.
What? Yeah, they did it. What can we do about it? Nothing. It's a whole other branch of government. All right, I guess that's just what we're doing now. And I guess now, like, you think of like modern times, like presidents indirectly get credit for Supreme Court decisions under Marbury versus Madison, judicial review, because they nominate Supreme Court justices who serve life terms. So like Reagan appoints justices and they're 40 or 50 at the time, and they preside for 40 other years or however many years. That sets, like, in modern times, that's how the presidency and the judiciary interact. Mm-hmm. And the legislature too, because the Senate has to confirm them, but the president nominates them. And so because the Supreme Court can nullify laws, when a president appoints Supreme Court justices, that's a massive deal. And that's why it's always like, whenever someone does something they don't like, they say, a Reagan appointed judge said this. And so it's like, oh, you get the credit or the blame for appointing this justice, because now you can overturn laws that are unconstitutional. And that became a thing in 1803.
Okay, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Well, sounds like you like Thomas Jefferson.
I like the 17th century.
Yeah.
Almost exactly the 17th century. No, that'd be the 19th century.
Yeah, I was going to say 1700s.
Yeah, no, I wish, why don't we just make it, the century is the 18th century should be the 1800s, but the 18th century is the 1700s.
Yeah.
It's dumb.
It's like you've been married 10 years, but you're celebrating your 9th anniversary.
Yeah.
It's like...
What? We're in our first decade of marriage.
Yeah.
We've been married 7 years.
Yeah.
Why did I say 7 years? It makes it sound like it's 10 years. No, it's not. It's 7.
Cool. Well, we did it. It was a long one.
Yeah.
But
I just love Thomas Jefferson.
Yeah,
and how many slaves he had. I love it.
That'll be...
He still has slaves if you believe the legacy of Thomas Jefferson.
Yeah.
No, just in general, Thomas Jefferson, he did a lot of big things to set up like the next 70 years, basically the Civil War. But he was a principled man like Adams, but he compromised enough to get big wins. And I think he was self-aware enough to realize, like, yeah, I'm kind of a hypocrite. Like, not even kind of a hypocrite. I'm definitely a hypocrite. But by God, I'm winning, and I'm doing it. And he was doing it for the country. He believed in the country. He wanted it to do well. And so he made compromises for the benefit of the country. I mean, I guess in his perception, in his estimation, they were the best decision for the country. So, like, in the same way, I say John Adams is a good guy, even though he lost a lot. Thomas Jefferson, on the whole, was a good person, a flawed person, a person like a product of his time. But as a president, unlike Adams, as a president, did a lot of stuff to like set up the next chapter of American history. Mm-hmm. Even though he didn't really know it at the time. So it's kind of like, in retrospect, yeah, he did a lot of good things. So, yeah.
Cool. Well, I'll just say one thing, I guess I should say I don't like about Jefferson.
The slaves?
No.
Oh.
It's the fact
no, I'm fine with that.
It's one thing to be a deist.
Mm-hmm.
It's another thing to actually edit the Bible and take out so much of it, including the resurrection and just anything with like regarding miracles. He trimmed it down to like 40 pages.
Mm-hmm.
That's like such a weird thing that I think is overlooked. Like, can you imagine if like a president now did that?
Yes, I can imagine.
Okay, well, I mean,
it would not be good. Yeah. It would not be
in
good.
A way that that would like, I don't know. I can't even, they would be down.
They'd probably kill him.
Yeah. And so, unfortunately, he had like, I've heard stuff like, oh, Thomas Jefferson, he was like still a Christian. He just struggled with God and stuff. And I'm like, I don't really, I don't think he was.
He's as Christian. He was as Christian as Mormons.
Yeah, right.
So not. No shade on the Mormons. I love the Mormons. I love the Mormons. We love the Mormons.
Yeah.
Not Christians, though. Don't believe in the Trinity. Yeah. You don't get your own planet. God's real and he intervenes. There are miracles. So, yeah, that's that's one of those, like, I like Thomas Jefferson, so I put the blinders on.
Right, that's what I mean.
Like, and that also, he totally, like, destroyed 90% of the Bible just because he thought that it was better that way.
Yeah.
It's like, Thomas, you don't get to decide that, like, the Bible should be the way that you think the world is. But again, like, the modern age thinking of, like, miracles can't be that can't be a thing. So, like, we're just going to narrow this worldview down to, like, what we can prove or what seems right from my perspective. It doesn't make sense. Like, it's one thing to come up with an idea and think, like, I perceive this new thing in this specific way. It's another thing to be like, hey, this thing that's happened for, like, at this point, 1,800 years, I'm just going to, like, shave all of it down because I'd like to. Yeah. That's a different kind of, that's like a more hubris thing. Like, I'm smarter than these people. Yeah. Versus I just have a different idea than these people. And that, I don't like that. And I think that's probably, I don't want to say he was cursed, but I think you don't get to shave out 90% of the Bible and kind of get away with it.
Yeah. It's like, I mean, I can put my thoughts and defend the Sally Hemings thing, but his relationship with God kind of brings it down a bit of a peg for me.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely it's an arrogance that kind of plays out through his presidency. Mm-hmm. Like, he kind of. I mean,
like I said before in the beginning, mixed legacy. Yeah, just like many people. So not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. No, but
it's true. It's a part of what happened, and it's an insight into the kind of person he was. Like, I can just edit the Bible. Yeah. What about the part of the Bible that says you can't edit the Bible? Well, I'll edit that out. It doesn't say that now. Okay. So, yeah.
Anyway, cool. Well, other than that, I don't want to end on a downer, but no, he's, I would say he was like a top 10 president for me, but then doing all the research for this episode, he's probably a top 5 for me. So, maybe he would have been a top 3 without the Bible thing, but
just put the blinders on. Exactly, he's easily first ballot Hall of Fame. Who's next? Madison's next.
Yeah, we got War of 1812 and everything, and then so we're kind of now finally leaving this era of the formation of the country. Now we're on to what's knocking at 1812. So.
Yeah. All right, as soon as we get established, let's have a war.
Yeah. But until then, we'll see you guys in the next episode.